Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and I'm here tonight with my first impression of new set of tubes that came in a few weeks ago. These are Ray tubes, and this is the 12AU7 Select version, and these were loaned to me by APOS Audio. These currently sell for $79.99 for a single tube or $179.99 for a match pair. And I did want to explain a little bit of confusion in my last video. A couple weeks ago did my full review of the Ray Tube 6, the 6SN7 Select. And apparently there was a little bit of confusion. I thought that these tubes were a APOS exclusive. I thought these were made specifically for APOS. And I was informed that it didn't work quite that way. Apparently Ray Tubes is its own company, and these are sold through APOS Audio, but they're not made exclusively for APOS. You can buy these directly from Ray Tubes, or you can buy them from APOS, and I think there's actually a couple other companies selling these. And I was confused for some reason, but I don't think I was the only one. I looked on YouTube and looked up several videos or reviews of the Ray Tubes, and most of them said APOS Ray Tubes in the title. So I think other reviewers were also a little confused and thought that this was sort of an APOS exclusive, but like I said, apparently Ray Tubes is its own company, and APOS just happens to have a partnership with them and is selling the tubes. So now that we got that out of the way, did want to mention that these are the Select version. There's two or three different versions of most of the Ray tubes. And the Select means that these were hand selected out of the batch. And it looks like, according to the website, that these fall into the top 4% of the batch. So you are getting hand selected, actually listened to tubes that are picked out to be the best of the batch. These have gold pins, which prevents corrosion. Tubes without the gold pins the pins can eventually get corroded and cause a lack of a connection, or can cause you static and problems like that. And the gold pins is going to save you from having to pull the tubes out, clean the pins, or at the least wiggle them around. They have a silk screen print on them. They have a 12-month warranty, which I don't know a whole lot about other tube companies, but apparently a 12-month warranty isn't very common with tubes. I did want to show you the tubes. First of all, they come in a very nice sturdy, heavy-duty box. It opens up. It's actually got Velcro on it. Opens up, and you've got an instruction book and a few other things, and then the tubes come packed in a really thick piece of quality foam. And I'll try to pull one of these out here and give you a close-up look. You can see the 12AU7 there on the front. You can see the gold pins, and like I said, the print on these is silk screen. So before I get into my review, I wanted to discuss the equipment I've used to review these and how I've gone about reviewing them, because I've basically figured out, as far as I can see, there's three real ways to test tubes, and I'll talk about that in a second. But first I wanted to start out. My source has been an SMSL PL200 CD player that I've been using as a transport. I've been using a couple of different decks. One has been the Topping D70 Pro Saber version, and the other has been the Hi-Fi Man Himalaya Pro, which is built into the Serenade combination amp deck that can be used as a standalone deck. And the amp that I've used to do this comparison is the Wells Audio V8. It's an OTL type tube amp, and it's sitting right here next to me, so you can get a good look at it. And I'm using that because it's the only amp I happen to have at the current time that uses the 12AU7. That would be the two smaller tubes in front here. So, and then as far as headphones I've used in this review, I've used the ZMF Atrium, which is just a fantastic headphone to use with OTL tube amps. If you happen to own the ZMF Atrium and you have not heard it with a good OTL type tube amp, you have not heard what that headphone is capable of. They just really bring out the best in that headphone. Anyway, I've also used, and you might think I'm crazy, because OTL tube amps normally do not do well with planar magnetic headphones. They can't provide enough current. Well, this one does. I was told it did before I received it. I was told that this amp does a very respectable job of even driving the Hi-Fi Man Susvara, which is one of the hardest headphones to drive that you can buy anywhere. And I really didn't believe it until I tried it. And I got this amp here in my house and hooked up the Hi-Fi Man Susvara, and even comparing it to other amps that drive it very well, this amp does an outstanding job. Also, the Hi-Fi Man HE6 SE version 2, which is also almost as hard to drive as the Susvara, does a very good job. So those are two headphones that I used in this review of these tubes. And like I said, this is just my first impressions, and I will do a full review at a later time. Might be a couple months from now. I'm still backed up on videos I need to do. But anyway, the Susvara and the HE6 SE are very revealing headphones that are going to show any differences that there are in tubes, if there are differences. So anyway, what I wanted to talk about for a minute is I can figure out three ways to compare tubes. And the first and ideal way would be to have two identical headphone amps or speaker amps, two identical tube amps, and have one set of tubes in one amp and another set in the other amp, and then be able to compare them directly with no time delay. Just unplug my headphones out of one amp into the other amp and be able to compare the two with only a couple seconds of delay. Unfortunately, I do not have two identical amps that I can do that with. So then the next option was listen to one set of tubes, shut the amp off, let them cool off for about 10 minutes so you can handle them, pull the tubes out, replace them with the other tubes, and then give the amp at least 5 minutes of warm-up time. Now you're looking at a 15 to 20 minute delay between one set of tubes and another. And I was really struggling with that because I had a very hard time remembering subtle little differences between two tubes with a 15 to 20 minute delay. So before I did my full review on the last set of tubes, I figured out a better way to do it short of having two identical amps. So what I did is, like I said, this is my amp I tried the tubes in. So I've got about half a dozen tube amps. And I picked the tube amp that was the closest in sound to this amp. It doesn't have to be exact, I'm just using it as a reference. So what I did is I hooked up both to the same source, this Waveborn Power Amp Plus, which happens, it looks completely different, and it's actually a transformer coupled amp, but these two actually have a very similar sound, and they're both capable of powering hard-to-drive headphones like the Susvara. So what I did is, with the stock tubes in this, and I did want to mention that the stock tubes are TAD, or TAD, whatever you want to call them. The model is the 12AU7A/ECC82 selected version. So that's the tubes that came stock in this amp. So what I did is I left the stock tubes in this amp and turned on this amp, same source to both, and compared the two amps back and forth looking for differences. And there are some differences because they're not the same. I mean, they're different companies or even different types of tube amps. But like I said, they do have a very similar sound. So I compared these two back and forth for quite a while and listened for any differences and made notes of what the differences were between these two amps. Then I switched over to the Ray tubes in the Wells Audio and then went back and compared the two again to see if the differences were the same or if there were different differences. So actually in my last review, and that was the Ray tubes 6S and 7, by doing it that way, I actually heard some pretty substantial differences, some obvious differences between those and the stock PS Bain tubes, and that was in the Felix Audio Elise, which is up behind me, sitting right here. So by using that method of comparing tubes, I was able to actually find some pretty significant differences in tone balance and soundstage width, soundstage depth, dynamics, and different differences. Okay, but like I said, this is just my first impressions. I've put in probably about 3 or 4 hours a few nights ago comparing these tubes to the stock TAD tubes. And to be honest, after about 3 or 4 hours of testing and switching tubes back and forth 3 times, I think, I really didn't find any substantial differences in the sound. And I'm not saying there aren't differences. I'm just saying that there aren't any large differences that really stood out to me. And it will take me some more time. I will dig in a little deeper. I'll try some different headphones, see if that makes a difference, because sometimes that can make a big difference. 2 tubes might sound the same with one headphone, but another headphone might bring out the differences. So anyway, comparing the Ray Select tubes to the stock TAD tubes, like I said, not any substantial differences, but I do feel I've heard a few small differences. And the main difference is vocals, whether male or female, with the stock tubes, the TADs, to me sounded slightly warmer than with the APOS, but the APOS vocals, both male and female, sounded just a little more forward, just a little more emphasized, a little larger part of the music. The vocals just stood out a little bit more. And I'm not talking a huge difference in warmth. You know, the TAD tubes were just slightly warmer and the Ray tubes were just slightly, the vocals were slightly on a higher level. Not saying sound quality higher, but just on a volume level, just slightly higher, a little larger part of the music. The soundstage width and depth were very similar between the 2 tubes. The clarity and detail were very similar. The tone balance, other than the vocals, was also very similar. Similar bass, similar treble. The extension was excellent on both sets of tubes as far as highs and lows. Another difference I heard, and I'm not even positive about this, once again, it's going to take a little more time, but I think the Ray tubes might be just slightly a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more punchy sounding. But other than that, like I said, not any huge differences. So the bottom line is I really, really like this amp. I'm currently reviewing it. I've done my first impressions. Haven't done my full review yet, but I love this amp and it sounds outstanding with either tube, either way. And so the differences to me are kind of a sideways difference. It's kind of more the flavor of the tube, more a preference. Do you want the vocals a little more emphasized and a little larger part of the music, or do you want the vocals set back just a little more where the music is brought to your attention more so than the vocals. And like I said, it's not a big difference, but I am hearing a small difference in that respect. So, the stock tubes are fine. These are also fine. Like I said, I love the amp with either of these sets of tubes, and it doesn't seem to matter which I use as far as it having enough power to drive the Susvara or the HE6SE. Both seem to do fine. Where with the Elise amp, switching over to the APOS tubes seemed to make it do a little better with planar magnetic headphones than the stock PS Vane tubes, but the stock PS Vane tubes were definitely warmer and more tube-like. So like I said, it's going to depend amp to amp. With this amp, I'm not hearing any huge differences, but with your amp, you might hear a huge difference, and different brands of tubes. I mean, this tube here sounds pretty close, but depending on the tubes, and maybe, who knows, maybe by the time I get to my full review of these, I'll have another brand of tubes that I can throw into the mix and also compare. So anyway, that's where I'm at right now. I'll try to get back to you in a month or two with a full review of these and dig in a little deeper, try some other headphones, and see if I can find any more differences, anything more obvious. Maybe I missed something my first time around. So, it depends. Everybody has their good days and bad days. I spent like 4 hours over 2 evenings comparing these, and like I said, I hear small differences but nothing substantial. But maybe another day, it depends on your brain, your ears, just the environment, your stress levels. So many things can affect your ability to hear fine details in music. So I'll give it a few more tries before I do my full review, see what I come up with. So anyway, once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and if this video helped you, please give me a thumbs up, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And the Headphone Experience on Facebook is up to 33.3 thousand members. And once again, thanks for watching my video.